Well, there is a tradition that Kislev is a month of dreams. There's a tradition based on versions of an ancient book called the Sefer Yetzirah, that this is the month of dreaming, and of course it's the month when the darkness is increasing, so it's a good time for sleeping, and that means it's a good time for dreaming.
Welcome to Purple Honey, a gathering of female voices where we explore the sweet spot between Jewish wisdom and feminine spirituality. I am your host, Jody Bayless. It is dark outside, so dark, in fact, that as that beautiful moon that I was admiring outside the window tonight, it was so full, it will soon be waning. And as the moon is waning and the earth is shifting to the farthest point from the sun, we will soon be in the darkest day of the year, solstice. It is almost as if the outside world is saying to us, lights out, go to sleep. In this time, in the Jewish cycle, our attention shifts to dreams. We are in a place where the Torah, our core text, is heavily focused on dreaming. And so I wanted to explore dreams, being also that Kislev is the month of dreaming. I wanted to understand and tap into how might we view our dreams as a way into a deeper relationship with ourselves and as a way into a deeper relationship and connection to Earth and with our communities. So today I'm in conversation with Rabbi Jill Hammer. Rabbi Jill Hammer, PhD, is an author, teacher, midrashist, mystic, poet, essayist, and priestess. She is committed to an earth-based and wildly mythic view of the world in which nature, ritual, and story connect us to the body of the cosmos and to ourselves. Rabbi Hammer is the director of spiritual education at the Academy for Jewish Religion, a pluralistic rabbinical and cantorial seminary in Yonkers, New York. Rabbi Hammer is also the co-founder of the Kohenet Hebrew Priestess Institute, a program in spiritual leadership for Jewish women. As a leader of the Kohenet Institute, she creates and teaches earth-based embodied ritual and study that transforms Jewish conceptions of prayer and ceremony. Rabbi Hammer is also the author of 5 books, including Sisters at Sinai, New Tales of Biblical Women, the Omer Calendar of Biblical Women, the Book of Earth and Other Mysteries, and the Hebrew Priestess. Rabbi Hammer also has written an unpublished book titled Elemental Dreaming, and her forthcoming book is called The Magic, Meditation, and Mystery of Sefer Yetzirah. I really enjoyed this rich conversation with Rabbi Hammer, and I hope you do as well. Here is our conversation. I would love to open up our conversation about dreams, actually in sharing a dream with one another, if you're okay with that.
Absolutely.
And I first wanted to share a dream of mine with you about this conversation, actually, leading up to our conversation. You know, I think the simple, because my mindset was on dreams, dreams have just been flowing for me personally. And so one that I had maybe, I don't know, it was in the past 5 days, was we were sitting and having a conversation about dreams. And then I looked down into this very narrow pocket that was the pocket of Kislev, pocket of the heart, where we are in this moment of time on the calendar season, in the season. And you know how in dreams that, you know, you might be watching something, you might be experiencing something, there might be something slow, there might be something fast. And then there's an experience where you feel like you're being told something that feels truth, like it is. Mm-hmm. And so what I heard, what was, you know, it's hard to bring words to that truth, but it felt like it was saying to me, when you're having this conversation, sit deeply in the season. Sit deeply in Kislev. And while, there's many areas where I think our conversation could go and will go, I'm finding that grounding of the season in talking with you about dreams.
Beautiful.
In asking you about a dream, about your dreams, there was an article you wrote in which you shared, dreams invite us to understand ourselves as part of the ecological whole. And then you go on to state, I have developed a reverence for the ways dreams manifest our oneness with the cosmos. And I'm curious, is there a dream in your dream life that felt like it brought wholeness to you? It brought you, a healing that you are part of a larger whole.
There really is. In fact, that's what I look for in all of my dreams, although that, only comes in a full way once in a while. I'm thinking of two dreams. The first one's really brief and more recent, where I dreamed that I put my hand into the earth and I saw that the earth and my hand were connected. Like there was earth coming out of my hand as if it had originated inside me. And that was a really amazing dream. This sense of being one with the earth, that in the dream I was actually seeing something that's true, right, but that we can't really see on a macro level, right, which is that we're really all part of the planet. But in a dream, sometimes we can see that in a more direct way. Our dream uses images to tell us about things that are true. And so sometimes when I or other dreamers dream about, like being flooded by water is a common one that people have, where there's a big wave and it's going to hit them and it's scary, and then the wave hits them and everything is fine. And they're okay, and sometimes they're even exhilarated. And that kind of dream also for me is about, the larger cosmos. It's so scary to be part of something that big, and we want to stay separate. But when we actually let go and become part of that immensity, then we realize that, that's who we are. That's perfectly safe. Well, anyway, it's exciting and real. Not always safe, but it's exciting and true. And the other dream I wanted to share is one that I had when I was a teenager, and it stayed with me ever since. It was a very important dream moment for me. And in the dream, I'm walking over a bridge. I can't see the river or ravine that it's over, but I'm walking over a bridge, and I come to this low building. There's another smaller low building next to it, and I go into this smaller building. And there are, dragons living there. And for whatever reason in the dream, it seems perfectly clear to me that what I'm supposed to do is ride one of the dragons. And so I get onto this dragon. And the dragon flies, and it flies into the low building, through a window. And so I'm thinking, whoa, how is this building going to contain this great animal? But it turns out that the building extends a very big depth below the ground, so it's actually a very large space that we've gone into. And we're flying over this immense garden. And I realize that I can actually direct this beast that I'm flying with my mind, and I can tell where it goes. I can see all of these amazing things. I begin to look at the different parts of the garden and how beautiful it is. And then I begin to realize that I'm dreaming. And I have like a sinking feeling because I know that this means that I'm going to wake up. And I don't want to wake up. And so I'm telling myself, don't wake up. And of course I did wake up. But there's just this amazing feeling of seeing the variety of the garden. Every piece of it is different. Every piece of it is beautiful. And it really struck me later as an image of the cosmos. It is an image of the human love affair with the beauty of the world, and that this, giant creature that I was flying, in some ways was the animating power of this world and wanted to show me how beautiful it is.
Oh, that is so beautiful. There's so many things that bubble up there for me. One actually is when you when you shared the realization in the dream that you were dreaming, first of all. And have you learned about like lucid dreaming?
Yes. And some people really seek that out as a dream experience. I don't seek it out because it does tend to make me wake up. I have had occasion. But I'll tell you a story that is kind of like a lucid dream. Lucid dreaming is, when you know you're dreaming, and when you're able to direct the dream because you know you're dreaming. And that happened to me on occasion. But the thing that has happened that's actually been even more interesting for me is that sometimes I learn from previous dreams. And in the dream, I don't know that I'm dreaming, but I do remember all of this information from previous dreams. So I had one experience where my daughter was very, very young, and I had reacted to, sort of her vulnerability by having a lot of dreams of her drowning. And they were very, very disturbing dreams. And she would basically fall into a lake or a puddle and sort of disappear, and I would be unable to find her. And I had a dreamwork at the time who said, well, this is you looking for your soul. And that interpretation was okay, but didn't really work for me because it really was, it really felt like it was in some way about my relationship to her. And at one point I had a dream where we were walking on a path and she fell into a puddle, and I thought, oh, it's happening again. And then I remembered in my dream the other dreams, and I said, oh, I know what to do about this. And I went under the water, which I had never done before, and she was right there, and I found her, and I brought her up. And after that, I never had the dream again.
Wow.
And it was like I was working on this problem in my dream, and then I figured out what to do about it. And what to do about it was actually to go to the place that was frightening and, to go into the deep. And
what feeling did that bring? A feeling of completion or healing for you when you went into that second dream?
It brought for me a feeling of kind of empowerment. I can operate in this dream world, and also just a sense of having cracked the code. Dreams tend to present you with the same problem over and over again, and ideally you're working on that problem with the dream, and then eventually you want to solve it. This experience happened to me previously when I was a teenager, and I used to dream about scary dreams about snakes. This is uncommon. And I would have these dreams, and they were very disturbing. And of course, the snake is a sacred symbol of the feminine, but I didn't really know that then. I just knew that they were scary. And at a certain point, an angelic figure named Gabriel came to me in a dream and gave me a sword and said, okay, you're going to kill the snake. And this giant snake came, and I killed the snake, and I never had another snake dream for many years. So there was something about life and adolescence, and bhakti had been working its way out, and this was the healing of that.
And Jill, I've been really thinking about this in the sense that we're in this moment of time where we're globally, collectively as humans, we are becoming more woke to these really deep wounds. And I feel like what one of the things that's bringing is an evolved understanding of what healing could be. And so it feels like dreams are in line with this as well, that there's dreams are present in our lives every day. And then the more we can direct our attention to them and weave the pieces, as you have explained in some of these dreams, that there's a continuation, that there's a language through symbols, and there's scenarios that over time that we might be able to find this resolution or healing in our dreams.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, I want to share a couple of dreams, not mine, but dreams from dreamers that I've worked with and spoken to, that very much deal with this question of global healing coming through individuals in their dreams. This is one of the kinds of dream that I like to work with. And I'll give one example. I heard once a very beautiful dream about a woman who was near a pond, and the salmon had returned to this pond. And at a certain point, she dives into the pond, and she goes down, and she touches the earth, and then she realizes that she can't move around. And the reason she can't move around is that she has a heavy computer strapped to her back. And when she is able to free herself from this machine, then she's able to kind of rise through the water. And what struck me, there are two things that strike me about this dream. The one thing is the idea of the return of the salmon, right? That the salmon knows its way home. It just knows. It doesn't have to be told. And so that she's finding in this place the salmon are returning home, right? That's a signal for her and for us, right? That we have to follow our instincts to know our way home. And the second thing in the dream, right, is that there is this sense, and without kind of overly knocking technology, there is this sense that when you are too plugged into virtual reality, right, it's harder to tap into, the reality that is the natural world. And the dream, says this in very, very direct language. And I actually don't like to use the language of symbol because it doesn't symbolize to me. It's quite direct. It's really communicating. Like, you got to take off that computer. And then you'll be able to find your way home. So that is one of the kind of dreams that speaks to me in terms of healing. Another dream that I want to mention is, there's a whole phenomenon of people dreaming about flooding now, right? Dreaming about global warming and the oceans rising. And some of the dreams are very scary, like people walking along beside the lakes and seeing that there are buildings under the lake, or in one dream that someone shared with me, a polar bear came and, basically said, "You're killing us, what are you going to do about it?" There was one thing that really moved me, in which a woman saw that the flooding was occurring and then went under the water and saw that there were like mermaids down there, that people had kind of grown gills and were able to live under the water. And that struck me also, not only as a kind of as a fantasy, but as a dream about adaptation. We can't always stop what's happening, but we can adapt to it. And there's, as you know, there's a big conversation about adaptation now and how we're going to adapt to the changes that are coming. So those kinds of dreams, I think, are really powerful. I want to share one more. This one is so simple and beautiful. Another dream in which someone was watching loggers cut down trees and, seeing the stumps of the dead trees. It was a very sad dream and a scary dream. These sort of big, scary, loud machines cutting down these beautiful trees. And she began to cry, and she noticed that as her tears were falling on the ground, there were little shoots coming up where her tears had touched. And I was so touched by that. There's something about our learning how to feel again and how to relate to and care about other creatures that is part of the healing for the world.
There's two directions I would love to go, but one, just hearing, thank you for sharing these dreams. And, in just the hearing of them, it feels I feel I'm having visceral reactions. And it feels like, and I will kind of jump to the idea of dream sharing and having a community of dreaming is a practice that I understand that you that you practice, and you're going to actually in next spring going to be leading a course called Dreamwork as a spiritual practice, and dream sharing as part of that through the Kohenet Hebrew Priestess Institute, which you co-founded. You, as a group of women who are, steeped in text and innovative ritual, and really creating this, evolving, connecting to the lineage of feminine spiritual leadership. And as in today's world, you also all share dreams together, and it just feels healing to do this. So can you actually share a little bit about dream circles?
Sure. Dream circles happen in a variety of ways. There are a variety of traditions around them. And the point of a dream circle really is to share your dreams with the community. And the underlying understanding of a dream circle is that when you dream, you don't only dream for yourself. That your dreams have the potential to heal and enlighten other people. And also they have the underlying assumption that you can't actually fully understand your own dream without help. And most of the time, not always, sometimes it's very clear, but most of the time, there will be aspects of your dream that are hard for you to understand. And the need then is for you to hear other versions other understandings, other interpretations of your dream. And sometimes that will reveal something that was hidden from you. Because, for two reasons. First, because it's always helpful to bring another mind, or another heart to a particular image. And also because dreams sometimes tell us things that are hard to hear, and we may not really see them until someone else points them out. So a dream circle, essentially we use the phrase, in my dream of this dream, in the Kohenet dream circle, based on the tradition that I learned from Taya Shir, who she learned from others, that all of us offer sort of a dream of the dream. It's not the interpretation, but it's an interpretation. Mm-hmm. And this is also in line with the ancient Talmudic idea of dreaming, where the Talmud says many things about dreams, but one of the things that it says is that there were 24 dream interpreters to Jerusalem, and I went to all of them, and all of the interpretations came true. So it's very deep in Jewish tradition that just as a sacred text can have many meanings, a dream can have many meanings.
I'm visualizing like a passage of Talmud with all of the commentaries around it, and it's like a similar, right, like a similar frame of you have your dream with all of the interpretations around it.
Yes, you dream exactly the way you read Torah, like with lots of different midrashim, lots of different creative interpretations of the dream. So I love that. It's a wonderful community practice, first of all, because so many amazing healing images come out of it. And also because you know someone differently when you know how they dream. Like there's an intimacy that's created between people when they share dreams in community together. And sometimes even we have sacred practices that arise out of dreams, that some image comes out of a dream that really speaks to us as a community, and then that image plays itself out in the waking world.
It really feels like there's a synchronicity in that, like, as you shared, the dreamer herself receives multiple perspectives that may, deepen the insights into the dream, and those that are hearing the dream may also, the dream itself may be medicine, a version of medicine for the listener of the dream.
Right. And one other thing I want to say, the history of this practice, the history, less of dream circles, but more of dream interpretations, is that women who didn't always have access to the interpretation of sacred text had access to the interpretation of dreams. And if you look at stories from 16th century Sfat, which was the city was Sfat, which was a profound hotbed of Jewish mysticism. And we have a lot of texts from men who lived in that time period in that city, but we don't have texts from women. But what we do have is the diary entries of a particular sage named Chaim Vital, who went to women to interpret his dreams. And also women brought him their dreams and shared them with him. And so in his diary, he records like all of these visionary women who were doing dream work in Sfat in the 16th century. And it's absolutely amazing. And you can see that for them, dreams were a big piece of their revelatory practice.
So it feels like that, dreams, women played a role in, there was inclusivity. Dreams was the dream space was the inclusive space for women at the time. Yes. It's beautiful. And, and speaking to this, this lineage, in our feminine spiritual practice, which you and Thea have really illuminated this path, kind of back through history and have created this momentum through the Kohenet Hebrew Priestess Institute, where women can move forward as spiritual leaders. And you, in your framework, have created 13 archetypes of female archetypes through which are the chords, the connections to this female line, this lineage. And one of them is, I believe it's the prophetess, is connected to dreaming.
Yes. So when we began to really work with these 13 pathways of Hebrew priestessing, we were essentially looking at Jewish history through a different lens and saying, where are the models for how women and other marginalized people did spiritual leadership, rather than adopting, the dominant model, which was developed, by men in a male-dominated society, sort of this model of, the rabbi, which has grown and changed over the centuries. Like, what if we look at how women actually did spiritual work and use that as our basis and our lineage? And so we developed these 13 pathways, both to notice that the sacred is multiple, right? There isn't only one way to do holy work. And also just to honor all of these different ways, like, the wise woman, the maiden, the seeker, the fool, the shrine keeper, who bring their various gifts to this lineage. And when we were working with the what we call the nativot, the pathways, we had a question about whether dreams went with the prophetess, the neviah, or the Balat Ob, who was like the spirit vessel or the shamaness. Because it really could have been both, and in many ways is both. And in the end, we put dreams with the prophetess because dreaming is associated with prophecy in the Bible. And before there is Torah, before there is sacred text, there are dreams that people guide their lives by, like in the story of Jacob and the ladder, and Joseph and the sheaves of wheat. So that was why, in the end, dreaming went with the prophetess. And if you look in some of these sort of texts about women, that describe women's dreams, sometimes they will be called prophetesses or visionaries.
So just to clarify, so I'm just talking to understand, but so that the prophetess is the prophetess connects to dreams.
The prophetess connects to all forms of visioning, right? All forms of visioning, particularly visioning for the future. So the prophetess is connected to social justice, but we also connect the prophetess to the drum and chant. And the creation of music that puts people into a sacred trance. And we also connect the prophet to social justice. Many of the social justice workers of the last couple of centuries, there are lots of Jewish women in that line, and they're sometimes called prophetesses by their contemporaries. So there's a lot of aspects of the prophet, and one of them perhaps is dreaming. And of course the Balat the shamaness, the spirit vessel who sort of channels the larger forces of nature, and the ancestors can also have the gift of dreaming.
Yes. And what I'm hearing you say is that, I keep wanting for those listening for dreaming to feel accessible, and it feels like to me, as you were describing, the prophetess as a visionary, where we are in that moment of time that we're we're being asked to be a prophetess, right? Where the earth is asking us in this climate crisis, and we're asked to imagine what this world could be like, and to live that out. I was going into this with the question that I think you really delineated nicely through the prophetess, by delineating prophetess and the shamaness, because my question was, what is the connection between dreaming and between journeying? And yes.
It's a wonderful question, and one I get asked a lot. And for some people, the answer to that question is there isn't a difference. Like one of my teachers, Dr. Catherine Shainberg, who teaches in, a long line of Kabbalistic dreaming practice that was passed through women. For her, right, the dream world and the world of waking vision are the same, right? We're always dreaming. And whether we're dreaming awake or whether we're dreaming asleep, right, we're always presenting ourselves with images that we can then learn from and steer our lives by. I see it a little bit differently than that, and that I think there is a lot of overlap between the kind of waking vision that one can have on a spirit journey or in a guided meditation, and the images that we have in dreams. But I tend to trust my dreams a little bit more. And the reason is that I know that, at least for myself, maybe this isn't true of a shamanic practitioner who's very deep in their in that practice from their youth, but for me as a Western person, who has a critical, who has a critical mind that interferes with my spirit vision. I know that my spirit journeys have some elements in which I am guiding them, right, in which my imagination is kind of leading, right, even if there are also powerful images that are occurring to me that come from the larger universe. But in my dream, I am fairly confident that I'm not going to lie to myself, right, because the dreams occur without our volition. And so I have a tendency to trust those even more than I do my waking journeys because of the truth factor.
Mm-hmm. And I've you're also a writer of midrash, and one way I've come to understand some of your writing, that very steeped in sacred text and also full of spiritual imagination. It felt to me that there was this connection of almost like of journeying, dreaming with writing midrash, and I was curious if there was a connection for you.
Oh, absolutely. For me, the connection between writing midrash is very similar. It's like dreaming into a text, right? You have a sacred story, and then you look at the details of that sacred story, and you're also looking in your own heart for where those details are resonating, right? And then somewhere in the gap between those things, right, comes this imaginative interpretation. And this is very similar to what the sages of old did. Right? They would also offer interpretations that were partly about what they saw in the text, but partly about what they saw in themselves in response to the text. Mm-hmm. So that really is a form of visioning, of kind of waking dreaming, when we are sort of allowing a text to sort of flow through us and spark ideas or reactions, or, some midrashim come out of a sense of the wonder of the text, and sometimes midrashim come out of a reactivity to the text, right? I hate this text, like what else could So for me, it's definitely related to the imaginative faculty. It was happening to me at one point in my life that I would sometimes dream midrashim. Like I would dream about a biblical text, and there would be some twist on it in my dream, and that was kind of amazing. So there is that, connection with actual dreams sometimes. And in fact, the Talmud says when you wake up from a dream, you should try to associate it with the biblical text. Some powerful practice about seeing the Torah in your dreams and your dreams in the Torah.
Well, it's so interesting because, you shared at the beginning of our conversation about this dream of a dragon and going down underneath where there was this large space and a garden. And I think maybe it was in the Hebrew Priestess, you also shared a dream where there was this sort of like going under and then there was a large space within. And that feeling really resonates with me. And then it emerged, one of my favorite of your midrashim is Miriam under the mountain.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Right. And Miriam, instead of going on top of the mountain like Moses, goes under the mountain, right? And her revelation happens in the cave under the mountain. Yes. It's really true. I mean, in that way, the images from my dreams come out in everything I write, my poetry and my stories. I dream a lot about underground space. That is a thing that occurs to me over and over again. It's clearly a kind of life theme that occurs in my dreams. Once when I was in Jerusalem for the year as part of my rabbinical training, I dreamed this amazing dream that still resonates with me, where the temple in Jerusalem was still standing, and I went to see it. And there was a level of the temple that had weapons, and then there was a level of the temple that had stuffed animals. And then under that, there was this network of underground caverns. And when I went into the underground caverns and began exploring them, they went deeper and deeper until there were rivers. And then down the rivers, then there was like volcanic lava, and there was there were channels of lava that reached into the heart of the earth. That dream really speaks to levels of meaning and levels of being. Right, that we create these sacred places, right, and sometimes we use them for violence, and sometimes we use them to comfort ourselves. And underneath that, is this deep core connection, to what's real, to what creation is all about, and that our dreams can actually guide us, down to that place. And so for me, the underground labyrinth is a very core dream image, and so of course, it ended up in my stories as well. So
much of what you've shared about your dreams, there's the underground, there's the earth, there's water, there's flesh. Could you share a little bit about your focus on the elements in understanding and connecting to our dreams?
So, for me, the practice of paying attention to the four elements, as rhythms in my life is a deep practice. And it arose partly out of experiencing teachings about the four elements in multiple faith traditions, including indigenous traditions, and partly out of my research into Jewish traditions around the four elements, like Kabbalistic traditions in which the four elements are a manifestation of the four worlds of body, heart, mind, and spirit. So it's a deep piece of my practice. So when I began to think about what I would want to share as my own sort of style of doing dream work, I began to look at the ways that dreams manifest the elements. And this really came out of a conversation with a dream worker in which he really wanted me to focus on the people in the dream and what they were doing and saying. And my sense was that the people in the dream were not that important, and it was the quote, inanimate things in the dream that were really important. that the earth in the dream, the houses and the trees, like those were the things that really mattered. And so I wanted to look at, when we look at what I call the elemental characters in the dream, right, who can actually be people, but often like who can be bears or who can be rivers, they're often saying something very powerful to us. For example, I collected a whole bunch of bear dreams, from people who don't encounter bears very often, but who were dreaming about encounters with bears, often under the earth. Or I collected a whole bunch of dreams where people are in a house, but the water is trying to get in, and so they're dealing with the fear and also the desire for the water to come in. There's one particular dream for me that kind of encapsulates what is important about looking at the elemental characters in the dream, where I'm doing a ritual that I want to represent wind. I'm thinking, well, we could use breath, or we could do song, or we could do bells. And I'm trying to conceive of this ritual, and I walk outside with a friend, and there is an immense windstorm that's blowing over trees. And, and we sort of begin, running to get away from the windstorm. So, there's a sense of, what humans invoke as the powers, there's the great powers, and then the actual great powers, right? And then when they show up, that's a whole other matter. So sometimes we get an inkling of those elemental forces in our dreams, and they can really be allies to us. They can be healers for us, or they can show us where to go next, and they can really connect us, to the universe. A friend of mine who lives in Germany once dreamt of this immense tree that she could go inside, and its branches reached all over the cosmos, and the tree had a heart, had a living heart that beat. An image like that is like that for me is an elemental image. Like that's the life that extends beyond what we call consciousness, into the consciousness of the cosmos. And, those characters, like the dragon in my dream, that's an elemental being. I would call it a fire being. If I was sorting them by elements, I would say that the dragon is a fire being, and the bear is more of an earth being. Right? But it don't really matter. What matters is the power of meeting the life of the cosmos.
So what I'm understanding you say is, while there are many things happening in our dreams that may have different vibrations, if you will, that these elements are really like a grounding, can ground us into and connect us into that larger whole.
Right. And you can always tell what the elemental beings are, because there are always more, there's always more of them, right? They're always more vibrant, like more powerful, right, than the rest of the dream. Like colors that are very, very bright. Someone shared a dream with me once in which she's on a bus, and the bus is going through, ugly neighborhoods, and it's not very interesting. And then eventually the bus goes into the countryside, and all of a sudden the bus is going underground, like in a tunnel, and then everyone on the bus begins singing. And, and there's this amazing vibration that's coming from the song that everyone is singing. And so for me, that's like a dream where the dreamer is transitioning from the mundane world, right, into the elemental world, where, like, everything is in vibration with the earth, right? And the dream is literally going under the earth. And then the people are adding their song, right? That there's this song that has this powerful vibration. And the dreamer said to me, I wish I had joined in the song. And I said, well, you still can. And so the way that we work with the dream is to say, here's a dream that's inviting you to add your song. Right? How will you do that?
Wow.
So the elemental moments in the dream can really direct us to the places in our lives that are the most vibrant.
Yes.
So when somebody dreams about water, I don't only interpret it, I also say, why don't you go swimming? Like, why don't you go connect to your water? Because that's what your dream is inviting you to do.
Yeah. I remember, along the lines of healing, as we were talking earlier, you shared a dream that sort of had a beginning and a completion, that healing, where a lantern before you entered rabbinic school, there was this unlit lantern that was part of your dream and you weren't sure what to do with it. And then later on, you had a dream of groups of women carrying lit lanterns, if I'm getting that correctly. And that it feels like, so the element fire clearly was the element of that dream. And it seemed to speak of a huge piece of your work in really activating feminine spiritual leadership and your journey in doing that.
Mm. Yeah, that dream is actually even better because the being that gives me the lantern is goddess, basically. God shows the dream as an enormous glowing pregnant woman. And it's very funny because the setting of the dream is a bar. Like I'm in a bar and everyone's waiting for the honored guest at the party, and God walks in, as this immense pregnant woman. And then that's when I received the gift of the lantern. And the next day, I actually called for an application to rabbinical school. That dream made it very clear to me that I had to do something to begin to fulfill the promise of the dream. Yes. And years later, I had the bracket dream of the women with the lanterns after the priestess program was already happening.
It's so beautiful, and I guess a little over a year ago when before I was just starting this podcast, I put myself in a guided journey, and again, like along the elements, it's making me a little more clear of connecting to the element of air, in that I took a very I went up into the clouds and was star jumping essentially, and entered this purple space, which for me purple is my spirit guide. That's just where she is in that vibrational color. And it said, similar to that voice I was sharing earlier about, sit in Kislev, it shared, the voice shared, it said to me, "You are a keeper of voices." And so it felt, in this formative time of starting a podcast, I'm holding sacred space for conversation, the air element actually, which I don't actually naturally connect to, just hearing you about the fire, hearing your story, about the fire. I'm like, oh yeah, I should, placing maybe a little more attention on the air element could maybe support, and support this process of holding conversation with women, with females.
Yeah. That's amazing. I love that as an insight. And it relates, I gravitate much more toward water and earth elements. Like fire isn't my sort of my go-to element, but it does seem to be when I do work for the world, fire does seem to come out. So sometimes it's the one that you haven't been paying attention to, that's about to be the crucial one.
Yes, yes. Jill,
so I love that. I want to support you in honoring and awakening your inner air element.
Thank you. Yes, I too am very water and earth, and so it feels like a spark just talking about placing attention on elements that somehow I feel like we have, inner blocks, right? That, might think, oh no, you don't need that, so, and again, dream states can sort of take us into those places where there are those barriers of our, ego, if you will, we don't have those barriers as much. In this season of coldness, of darkness, Earth is sleeping, trees are barren, the Northern Hemisphere, it's dark. Are there any practices that you personally like to engage in to support dream work?
Yes. The first thing I would say is, always have a vehicle for recording the dream afterward. Because for most people, the memory of a dream will delete very soon after you wake up. So it's kind of important to be prepared and know, if you have a dream, how you're going to write it down or record it or whatever, whatever it is. The second thing is, it's very helpful, though not always possible, to allow yourself to wake up naturally. I can't do it. I mean, I have a kid, I have to wake up at 6 a.m. But if you can, I find that it does help one to remember.
Hmm.
The other, I've also recently heard the advice that it's good not to move too much when you wake up, like to actually kind of go back into the position you were in when you were sleeping, that will also help you to retain memory. And there are various kinds of sort of gentle herbal ways to help dreaming. Lavender is one that works for me. Lavender is really gentle. Mugwort is a little stronger. People should check into it before using it, but it is something that works for people also with dreaming. And the other thing I would say, and this comes straight from Jewish tradition, is that there is this tradition of the she'elat chalom, the dream incubation or the dream question, that you can go to sleep at night with the intention of having a dream, either just any significant dream or having a dream about a particular issue that you're dealing with. And for some people, that can be a really productive practice that leads to important insights at night. And then whatever dream you have, that becomes an answer to your question.
Beautiful.
So those are some practices that I use. And people also have to figure out what works for them. Dreaming is a biological phenomenon, and that means it's different for everybody. And so one has to figure out, how you dream, sort of when is the best time to catch a dream.
Are there any ritual objects that you personally use? Well, you mentioned you have a stone.
Yeah, I have a dream stone that I bought in a rock shop. I bought a bunch of them, and I shared them with my dream circle at that time. I had a very, very beautiful dream circle a number of years ago, and we met periodically, and we all had these beautiful light green stones. The only other ritual object I really associate with dreamwork is my journal. I have a beautiful, special dream journal, and Rebbitzin Eve Ilson does actually recommend having a beautiful dream journal. That your innate desire to write in the beautiful dream journal will cause you to remember your dreams.
I love it. In closing, would you mind sharing? I just want to express such immense gratitude for your conversation today and your leadership. And both you and Taya have just woven together and are continuing to create something that, it feels like, it just feels like it's something growing that's creating such, I don't even know, power is not the right word. There's just this momentum for evolving the feminine spirituality as a model for leadership. And I just want to thank you for being an inspiration.
Thank you very much.
There was, in line with the link to our lineage, to the feminine lineage, there was a dream you shared, I think it was in Sisters at Sinai, about a missing Hebrew letter.
Yes, that was an amazing dream. I dreamt that I was giving a lecture, which is something I do in waking life, and I dreamt that I was giving a lecture, and that I was lecturing about a Hebrew letter that was missing from the Bible. And that if, you were to put the letter back in, the whole meaning of the text would change, that there would be something new there. And in the dream, I said I was going to name myself after this letter. And when I woke up, I ran to Google to find out if it was true that there was a missing Hebrew letter. And there are several traditions about this. There is actually a missing Hebrew letter in the Bible. There is a letter that was called the Gaim that was incorporated into a different letter, and therefore some of the words in the Bible sort of have this missing letter, but you can't really tell because the letter has been converted to one of the other Hebrew letters. So that was very exciting to find that out. And there's also this tradition of the four-branched shin that's kind of a mythical letter that doesn't really exist, but that actually appears on the tefillin, which are Jewish prayer objects that are worn in the morning. So there is this whole kind of tantalizing tradition around the missing letter. But for me, what it meant was that there is something missing from the text. There's always something missing from the text. And in particular, the traditions of women have been left out of the text. And so the dream of the missing letter for me became a reminder that we in this generation can have a role in replacing the letters that, putting in the letters that represent our own experience, and our own prophecy, and that does change the totality of the tradition. So I think it's a powerful image, the missing letter.
A powerful image and a powerful dream. And now for some sweet notes. Sweet note 1. Dreams connect us to wholeness. The dream Jill shared of flying on the back of a dragon into this low building that went down into the earth and opened up into a vast cavernous space filled with a lush multicolored garden. This connection to the vastness is something we can feel into in a dream. Whereas in our waking days, where we move from A to B to get done what needs to get done and to take care of those that we need to take care of to no fault of our own, and really as part of survival, we segment ourselves or even separate ourselves from this oneness. Dreams are a space to reclaim this oneness and this vast connection, or this connection to vastness or the cosmos. And in dreams, part of touching into this oneness is anchoring ourselves with images of the elements and of those elemental or foundational images that may appear or appear as strong images in dreams. So the elements themselves could be fire, water, air, or earth, or the elements can be an animal, like a bear, a salmon, or a dragon. It's those foundational images that can take us into that grandiosity, just like that dragon in Jill's dreams, flying into this wondrous cave where colorful flora filled in the spaces with wonder. And dreams connect us to wholeness by bringing us into some sort of resolution. It may take dreaming a certain scenario over time. And over time, these recurring situations, like how Jill described dreaming a snake, these scary images, sometimes that could be scary, can be approached head on. And going into them can result in this resolution where the dream then no longer appears. I also enjoyed talking with Jill about this unlit lantern that was part of a dream that led Jill to apply to rabbinical school, where fire was an elemental representation of the manifestation of her life's work. And then years later, after putting a lot of her work into the world, that dream or that image of the lantern reappeared where groups of women held lit lanterns, bringing a type of resolution and fulfillment. Sweet note 2. Dreamwork has deep roots in Jewish tradition. Biblical stories, especially ones that fall this time of year, are filled with dreams. Talmudic commentary heavily focuses on dream interpretation, and the Jewish mystics in 17th century Sfat regularly practiced dream interpretation. There's a strong lineage of women as interpreters of dreams, and as Jill shared, dreams were a through line to spiritual practice for women who were marginalized at that time. Jill traces through the records that could be found of women as dreamers, and she's written some online articles about this. I encourage exploring those further. I'll post those on my website. And 2 of them are called Entering the Cave, Women and the Art of Feminist Dreaming. And part 2 of that is Stealing the Yarn, Jewish Women and the Art of Feminist Dreaming. So I'll post links to those. Sweet note 3. Dream sharing brings communal healing. Dream circles, where the dreamer shares, the group listens, and a multitude of perspectives and insights emerge, is a practice emboldening all those who participate. I had not met Jill in person before, and yet through a phone conversation and in dream sharing, really felt like we dwelled in a place of deep connection by sharing our dreams. Listening to dreams requires empathy, compassion, and holding someone else's stories while honoring our own unique perspective and sharing our perspective based on who we are. Sweet note 4. Bringing the creativity and imagination of dream interpretation into reading sacred texts opens up the story and weaves us into the story. The story comes alive. And I really love how Jill described how for her, writing midrash is like dreaming into a text. I also really appreciated a piece of the Talmud she shared that encouraged, upon waking, to reflect in bed what your dreams were, and then to visualize where might these dreams be found in sacred text. And afterwards, I had a wild take on Joseph's multicolored coat, and it goes something like this. I imagined a large group of women living in Joseph's time, sitting around a fire in a large circle together, sharing one another's dreams, while passing around brilliant colored squares of cloth and sewing them together into a large multicolored coat. And I imagined each color representing each dream and the collective spirit of the women who dreamed, imbuing the coat with the powers of dreamers. And while there's really like no scholarly basis for this little fantasy of mine, I really enjoyed the practice of opening up the story and having this spiritual imagination and bringing that spirit of spiritual imagination to it. And so here is wishing you all a season that is filled with luscious, luscious dreams. I'd like to thank Rabbi Jill Hammer for her conversation. If you would like to connect to more of Jill's work, you can visit jillhammer.com, or you can find out more about the Kohenet Hebrew Priestess Institute at kohenet.com. Or you can go on redlentilconsulting.com. I posted a few of Jill's online articles. And I'd also like to thank Ethan Bayless, who is my partner, composer, co-producer, and sound engineer. Wishing you a wonderful season and a time to dream. I'm Jody Bayless, and this is Purple Honey.